Me too.
So what's the
hand?
Yeah, but what's the time on the sessions here?
It will start in 2 minutes. We are on 14:58 GMT, so it should start in 2 minutes.
Yeah, but just how long? That's what.
For 1 hour.
Okay. I guess we'll have to increase whatever we say, Malin.
We rarely have a problem with that.
Yeah.
If there will be any question, if you want to prolong your session behind 1 hour, we can take those in email or on the chat.
Yeah, no, it's just our original session is a little shorter than 1 hour, but we were also speeding through. So this time maybe we can get, use our time and not just have to spin through our slides hastily.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah.
The control is all yours, Malin and Thomas. Go ahead
Thanks.
for it, please.
All right. So I guess we can start by welcoming you all to our session about the HR and field service. So we'll be getting into the whys and whats and hows in a short while, but maybe just a quick introduction to who we are. Ladies first, I guess.
Seniority first. No. Thomas is just 6 months older than I am. So I always bug him about being the elder of us. My name is Malin Martnes. I work as head of Dynamics 365 at Knowit company in I am based in Oslo, but we are also in Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Germany, and a couple of places in Norway. I have been an MVP in business applications since July 2019, and last year I also became a MCT, so Microsoft Certified Trainer. My focus areas are in HR or talent, which it was called back then, and Dynamics marketing.
Yeah, so my name is Thomas Sandsør. I'm pretty much almost like a copy paste from whatever you saw on the left side here to the right side. I have the same role as Malin, except at a company called Point Taken. I also go by the name of the CRM Keeper, so that's my blog. And yeah, so Malin and I have been working together for many years in different companies. So that's also one of the reasons why we thought we would do a shared session, because as she said, she's focusing on the HR part, and of course then also marketing. I do anything Microsoft CRM related except project service, and so it could be an interesting match to see if we could come up with stuff that would work together in this case. I've actually great job. I forgot that we did this one in Norwegian, so I'll translate these to English. So the question here is why HR and field service? So HR and FS. And for those who really want to learn Norwegian, this is a great way to learn some Norwegian. So the reason why we did this, well, there's two main reasons. Well, one of them was because Malin challenged me to say, well, can we connect them? And I said, I have no idea, because I've never done this before. Because HR for me is over in what I would call the FinOps world, and I've never been there. And
could say that you had a couple of challenges when you're trying this.
We'll get to a few of the challenges afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. One is because, as Thomas say, the HR side comes from the finance and operations side of Dynamics. So the structure and the build-up and the entities and everything is the same in finance and operations as it is in HR. Whilst we live in the CRM world, that is completely different, structure-wise and entity-wise, and how everything is connected and everything. So I have been working with HR since March 2018. So I have been through this kind of rough patch of why is this like that? How on earth are these connected? Why is it doing that and not the way it's supposed to do? And I've had those headaches. So I was kind of sitting by the side of Thomas and just watching and kind of laughing while he was pulling his hair and gray haired, and I'm like, yeah, welcome to my world, dude.
Yeah. So just to put it in an easy way, there's a big difference between CRM and finance and operations, to put it that way.
Yeah.
So I did learn a lot. So, but it was also the reason why we're also this thing, the why HR and field service, and exactly field service, was because it was a very valid reason. And we'll get to that very quickly. But so what is human resource? And again, I apologize because I thought this was the English version that I had up right now, but we'll just continue in Norwegian. There are not that many text things here. So what is human resources? And I guess Malin will take us through this.
Yes. So as I said, for those of you, and I guess since this is a FinOps bootcamp, I guess all of you are familiar with the looks of FinOps, and HR is exactly the same, with a couple of exceptions. It was taken out of FinOps and into a separate system, but it's still very connectable with FinOps. There's even a standard integration with FinOps, and the menu structures are a bit different, but that is just about it. Otherwise, you can do all of your HR things in HR. All of the things that are HR in the HR module in FinOps are also in the HR, but not everything in HR is in FinOps. So there are some similarities, which it has to be because they need to integrate, but there are also very big differences in what you can do with HR.
And what is field service? So I'm going to be a little careful here when I say field service, because so this session originally was also targeted towards an audience that might not know what field service is. But speaking to a more of an ERP side of things, you might have a good idea what field service is, but maybe not from the CRM side of it, because as I've heard, at least, I haven't seen it. I only know it that it has been there in the old AX. There was a field service module. But when we say field service now, we're talking about what Microsoft is calling Dynamics 365 field service. And what is field service? Well, if you break it down to the extreme simple, it is basically a view of what your resources are and what degree of booking they have, and trying to get the first and best resource to do a certain job based on either location or competency. But that's just really breaking it down. We know that it's far more complex than that. So I'm just trying to sort of in the easy way. But that's, field service for Dynamics CRM, I would say easily it's based, this is the visual representation of the calendar, and there's a lot behind the scenes, of course. But why integrate? That's what it says here. Why integrate? It's going to be an interesting Norwegian lesson here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. HR is where you do all your information about your employee. So you need to put the address, the competency, vacation, the leave, And all of those is supposed to be in HR. And you want your employees to have one system where you put in all your information. And if it's information about the employee, that system should be HR. Period.
I agree.
Because there are a million places where you could put in this kind of information. But of course, HR is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And that's also these why integrate, because I agree HR should have this information. And even though it's possible to enter into field service, it would be better to have a centralized place to hold it all. And why integrate from field service point of view? Field service needs information about an employee to be able to book a resource. And that's the, sorry for the Norwegian again, location, almost the same word in ways, competency, just spelled a little different, and availability. That's the bottom one here. So these are pieces of information that we need to know in field service in order to book a resource for an assignment. And now meet Ted Howard. So Ted Howard will be our, what should we call him? Go-to guy throughout this.
Yeah, he's our dude.
He's our dude, Ted Howard.
Yeah, and here you can see all of the information about Ted in HR. So you can see that we have some kind of standard information about his status, some identification numbers, a bit of certificates, and you can put all of the information you need about Ted Howard inside of HR. And Ted, of course, is a person that needs to work in both HR and field service, because he is every employee of the Contoso. Of course, we're Contoso. Every employee use HR, and as Ted is also a field worker, he also needs to use field service.
So this is kind of like,
we don't want Ted to have to put in the same information in HR and in field service, because if you need to put information into two systems, it will not be done, most likely.
Exactly. And so this is the real reason why we're trying to integrate this.
Yeah, and of course, because field service is the place that gives him work, then we just need to have him integrated.
Right. So let's get technical-ish. And it's
because one big thing of this is neither Thomas nor I are developers. So this was also a very big step for us. Can we do it without having a developer with us? So could a normal standard person that is a functional consultant be able to do this kind of integration? Let's be honest, a couple of years ago, the answer would definitely be absolutely not. You had no chance of setting up a integration without being able to do at least some kind of code.
Right. So that's what I'm saying, technical-ish. Now, if there are any questions throughout this talk, I mean, I would be happy to answer them as best as possible. And yeah, but again, that's why we say ish technical. It's not that technical. So virtual entities. I'm sure that some of you will probably have a better understanding of virtual entities than I do. Mostly because you might have already been using them to integrate into CDS. You've gotten a better idea if you've done the FinOps working in towards CDS. But this was the first time I tried virtual entities at all. I have never done that before. I've only read about it. I know the theory about virtual entities, and I can easily in a sales meeting just talk about virtual entities and say that it's not a problem. We'll just solve that via virtual entities. But this was the first time I actually tried to connect an external source via a virtual entity. And so if for you that don't know what a virtual entity is, well, it is basically saying that instead of actually, so if we have an external system here, and let's say that that would be FinOps, an external system on the right side, via data providers like in OData version 4, we can, in the CDS, and sorry for that also now being the Dataverse, of course, but within the Dataverse or CDS, we can view the data without it actually being in CDS. So it's basically like a live feed of what is in an external system. This is a huge benefit for many systems, or at least for us in this CDS or the Dataverse world. And the fact that we can actually gain access to other systems. And with the newer FinOps, I even think, I mean, this is a full dual write scenario. I do not know the details of that. Someone with FinOps knowledge will know probably a lot more about these things, but virtual entities from the FinOps to the Dataverse world is definitely something you need to know in the future if you do not know it already.
And virtual entities wasn't a thing in HR until the fall release of 2020. So it's kind of a new thing that has come. And if you don't have the option of doing virtual entities in your HR system, then you just need to go to the feature management site and turn on the new feature because it needs to be activated to be able to do it.
Right. So I hope that was like a high level introduction to virtual entities. I can't probably go a lot deeper than that, but the whole point is that we wanted to see what it was like to connect HR to the CDS or Dataverse via virtual entities and see how that would work.
And one more thing before you go on, because in CDS or Dataverse, storage costs money. So if you have a lot of entities that you want to integrate and have two places, then it would be potentially cost a lot of money. But with the virtual entities, they aren't stored in the database. You just see them in your database. So you don't have to pay for storage either. So it's a really good solution.
All right, so we're going to start off by, this is basically describing how we did it, technically first, and then we're also, at the end, we're going to see the results of it all. And so this is the next part of this presentation will be more of the structural setup to make this work. And so this is one thing that I haven't done a lot of, but I've done every now and then, and it does become more and more frequent within the Dataverse world, where we create what is called an app registration, basically a service user. Instead of using Thomas Sandsør to integrate system A to system B, I'm using an app registration here, and I get an application ID, and I'm using an app ID, the application user or system user to integrate any system to Dataverse. So that we are no longer dependent on the username password of a single person, and that will also have issues if you have changing of passwords or etc. So again, you need to get to know the app registration and setting up a system user in Dynamics. So we just chose to call this one the Dynamics 365 Human Resources Virtual Entities. It doesn't really matter what you call it. And so the next thing was that we were just doing environments in the CDS, in Power Platform. So we had two different environments that came out. And this is also something I was trying to figure out, is whether or not I could have everything running on the same environments. But when you set up the trial for HR, the trial was the upper one here, the test drive. That's an HR trial environment. And this was the CRM trial below here. So it was different. And this, when you go a trial for the HR, I believe, if I'm right, Malin, that all of these are based out of the US tenant.
Yes, that's correct. So that is also why it could be a bit of a lag at times when you have an HR trial.
Right. And so this whole trial here down the bottom was the CRM. And since we are based in Europe, this was a normal Europe-based tenant for crm4.dynamics.com. So those are the two things that I noticed. And like then first I'm thinking like, well, do I really need to have two environments? Well, okay, that's at least how it was. And the first thing that you then have to do is you have to install into your environment an app that is called, go into the install. Sorry, this is kind of like a step-by-step way to get to this. You install the talent that is called Dynamics 365 HR Virtual Entity. So that's an app that you install. This app will predefine a form of connection in the Dataverse, and it is going to make sure that things are ready, because this is where the virtual entities here is this is kind of virtual entities cheating, because it does do a lot behind the scenes for you when we get to the HR part just in a little while, where I thought I was going to be going into the system and specifying the URL and everything, connection string, etc. There are a lot of things that have been done behind the scenes from the HR system and pushing to CRM what is supposed to be shown afterwards. But anyway, you need to install this app. This you need to install to the CRM environment. And so then there was this really odd thing where you have to go into the finance and operations virtual data source configuration. So even though this is the HR, you have to go into the finance and operations virtual data source configuration. And this is a table now after you install the app. This is a table that suddenly is now a part of the CRM or Dataverse.
Yeah, so you need to go into your CRM instance and do an advanced search and look for finance and operations virtual data source configurations. Just because that's the way it is. And I think this was one of the areas where you were kind of struggling, because the documentation wasn't really where it
wasn't all the way up to date. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no. So I think there are some blog posts coming out on this.
There might be, yeah.
on where you can do this.
So afterwards, then you have to do it. This for the CRM people. This is CRM pictures that we're seeing. For the finance and operations, this might be completely new. But this is how we can go behind the scenes in a advanced find and then create a new record for the table, new finance and operations virtual data source configuration. And this is the setup of that table. So most of these things here this was actually okay through the documentation also. So the target URL here is the simple, and please misunderstand me there when I say simple, this is the URL of HR. It's quite a long URL. But anyway, so this is the URL to the HR. And this is the app ID for the first thing that we did when we logged into the portal of Azure. And this is just the password for that user so that it can use it to authenticate. And do not worry, I mean, this demo environment is long dead, so this does absolutely nothing at the moment. Yeah, and the rest this is just how it had to be. There was nothing to do about that. So that's just how it is. And this is kind of just like, I can't really tell you why, it's just...
That's the way it is, period.
That's the way it is, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Going in on the HR side.
Yeah.
Many of you might recognize this a bit more behind the scenes in HR. So as I said, the first thing you need to do is go into the feature management to either do there or by searching for it. Finding the virtual entity support in HR CDS, and I think it's still called CDS, even though it's changed names again. And you just enable it now. It was unleashed a private preview in October. I think it might have gone out of preview now. But as it always is, if you are in a live production environment, don't use preview features. Just don't, because you have no guarantees that they will work. You have no idea if they're going to change it drastically or something. So if you are in production, wait until it goes into general availability, please. Or do it on your own. It's just don't. Just you don't have anyone to complain to if you get into trouble.
Right. And then I'll just take this one because I was just based on the service account user again. Because then we had to go back and do a special setup in the HR system to the Azure Active Directory applications and add the client ID for the service account that we had created, plus a unique ID for the record in CRM that I was just in the advanced find that has an ID, just to sort of match them together. So I'm not completely sure what this does, but it kind of seems to me that this is kind of what holds the where are you supposed to find whatever you're supposed to authenticate with kind of table. So it just looked like it was kind of just a thing for HR to understand where can I find username password to use to authenticate for Dataverse, or the other way around via the data. So again, I guess I just have to say this again through the guides. It's just like that, and that's the way it is. So before you maybe say something about the other thing, I just want to mention one thing. There is, if you go into this, you might ask, well, there's already a CDS integration or a Dataverse integration. Why couldn't you just use that? It's a great question. But the entities that they've chosen to show in the CDS integration have little to no meaning for a CRM system. I have not understood what I could use these entities for, because you can get the user, but you can't get the skill set or anything interesting about the user. And I'm not really sure why I need the user from the HR system
at
in
least
the CRM.
You couldn't, because there are every release they increase the amount of entities that are in the CDS integration, the standard one. And I could put in the chat a link for all the Dataverse tables, as it is called now, and so you can see what it is. And right now, the competency tables that are relevant here are skill type. So that's
which
the only...
makes no sense. Why would I need a type of skill? It doesn't. It's like, yeah, it's like knowing that there is the type of skill could be craftsmanship or knitting or skiing. I mean, it doesn't matter if you can't link it to a person. It just gives no value. So, but I'm sure but I do hope that they, make some more investments into this, because the difference here for me is that virtual entities is still a highly technical setup for me, but this thing right here is not a virtual entity. This is actually pushing data to the CRM or the Dataverse. So I prefer this integration because it means that I can easily access the data, while this is somewhat of a technical approach for me to try to create things in a virtual entity world. So I really hope that they make some investments here for the tables that I do need.
Yeah, when I've talked to the team, the HR team, about the CDS integration, I've asked many times on why it's not fully inside of the CDS or Dataverse. And the leader, he said that it's very hard because of the way it is structured together. So they think they could take just an easy entity and pull that out and put that in Dataverse. And what they then see is that a number of features then just crumble and doesn't work, because the other entities are dependent on that core entity. And if the integration isn't fully up, or if it isn't in the FinOps world, then none of the other stuff works. So it's kind of I understand that it's been really hard for them to trying to get everything over to Dataverse while having the good kind of information that they need and having the system work. So that's why it's taken a while for them to have all the information in the standard integration. But as Thomas says, with virtual entities, you don't have to think about storage in your CRM, which is really great.
So in the list of the virtual entities, I could search for anything. So what I did was just in the entity label here, I searched for anything with skill. And these are the tables that appeared. So I have coming from a CRM world, I had no idea what these meant. So I was kind of just saying, you know what, I'll take anything that has any topic of skill, and I'll try to look through the tables and see if I can understand which one of these tables gives me any information.
So you basically said, yes, give me everything, and I'll just go through them and see if anything works.
Yeah, there was one table that had everything, so that was perfect, but it took me a while to understand the structure. So after that, we do something called a generate refresh. And when you click this button, this is quite to my understanding, it's a little bit of a magic button, because so we do not, in the CRM world, we do not have the same deployment routines as you have in FinOps. So we have solutions and solution deployments, and we don't have to go through the lifecycle LCS to do changes in the system. We can do changes fairly live. But what this does is pushes out a solution with the configuration saying what entities. So once this works, and this is quite the hard bit, and I'm sure that if someone, I think there's at least one person on this chat right now I know that has tried this, and it was buggy. But once it works, it pushes out all of the configuration to CRM for you and defines the virtual entities for you. So I actually didn't have to do anything at this point, because I thought in CRM that I would have to do the typical connection towards virtual entities. Once this button works, everything is fine. So let's talk about TED. Yeah.
This is TED's employee record in HR. So this is where you can see all of the information about TED. And in the bottom right, you can see TED's skills. So he has got a level 4 of .NET, 4 of Invent, and 3 on planning. And we need these skills in field service.
Exactly. And this is the whole intent here. We want HR to make sure that all of this is up to date at any given time. And so actually there is a slide here with an updated CDS Dataverse. Nice.
Still getting used to the name changes.
Yeah. So I did find a table that had the employee, which was great. I guess I forgot to say that I did find I only show the skills table, but I also found the employee table, and that was included. So the employee table, and I am not quite, I think it's this one that I ended up using, the HR something 33, which was the unique ID that I could use for further rematching. Because there are all of these tables are somehow matched. I just didn't quite understand it in the beginning. And this again is just because I'm used to CRM. I understand all the tables there. And this was just new to me. So I'm sure this makes a lot more sense to anyone else. But anyway, so we found out that this is, but this is actually a virtual entity. I should point that out. I am now in CRM. And some people say, well, are you? It says Power Apps here. Well, the point is that Dataverse, the table structure of Dataverse is CRM. So you can call it whatever you want. It's still the original CRM table structure. But anyway, so I just created an app here.
Never not call it CRM.
Yeah, I will always call it CRM. And luckily I have a URL up here to back me up. So, but anyway, so this is I just created a Power App displaying the virtual entities that we have connected. And I click the employee entity, and this is just a live feed from the HR system. So this data is not in Dataverse or CDS. This is just a virtual entity from HR. But anyway, Ted Howard appeared here, and I could find his HR 0033, which was the ID that I needed to use, I believe. We'll see in the next slide. Because then within the skill competency, I don't know if you remember, but here we had here I did a filter then on the next virtual entity saying party ID, which was the HR 0033. These are the skills that he had. So he had a level 4, level 3, and level 2 for different skill sets in event planning and .NET, which then made me finally see, okay, this is great. That means that I can use this for something. And then this is very specific to Dynamics Field Service, CRM side. So within the resource that is Ted Howard. So originally, Ted Howard, when we create him as a resource in CRM, he has, out of the box, no connection to HR. It's just a loosely connected contact. But there's a tab here called Field Service, and within that Field Service, I will see, before I did any type of integration, there's characteristics. So he has none. And the characteristics are used in...
Are the same as skills.
Exactly. These are skills.
Same thing, different name. Thing which Microsoft is really good at.
Different teams, different names, everything is just... But that's a good way. I mean, at least we get to do... This is our job, right? Knowing all the differences. So anyway, this is what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to say that I need the skills to sync over to Ted Howard so that I could update this from HR. So what I did was, and you're going to understand, for anyone who knows that a lot about flows, this is a highly demo flow. It works, but it is manually triggered, as you say, because I mean, I only did this for the purpose of seeing if I could do it. So the structure of the flow here is not best practice, but you will understand what I do. So the first thing I did was I just start the flow, and then I hard code the I do it, because this is Ted. Normally, I would not hard code this. I would just get the list, and I would work through the list. But this was just because I only needed Ted. So this is the ID in the virtual entity table for Ted. And then I just had this just to basically make sure that I had in this compose, I just wanted to see what my outputs were. So I got to say that, see that it was Ted, his email address, etc. And that's just to show that we got Ted Howard when we run the flow. Ted Howard, this was his email address. And when I had the email address, I could match this to a record in CRM. So these records in CRM, I only need the email address to make them unique. That's perfect. And then comes the part where I connect skill sets. So what I did was I got the skill table. And again, another thing I didn't know was, could I use flow on virtual entities? And the answer is yes. I mean, it might be obvious for some of you, but it's not actually there. The entity is not there. But I'm using a standard flow with the CDS connector, and I'm seeing this table, which is not there, but I'm still being able to query the person called HR33, which is Ted, and then going through all of his skill sets, and that's why we say they apply to each, and looking for the one called .NET. Oops. Should not be doing scrolling. I thought it was something in the flow here, but and then of course I go up and update in sales the bookable resource characteristics, which is what Malin quite right said was this is the skills in CRM. And the characteristic I now, for the purpose of the demo, hard coded just to say update with .NET and update with rating value. And what resource is it? So again, I'm saying this is just for the demonstration. I hard coded the values just to make sure that it worked. In a production environment, I would make everything generic, of course.
So you can't copy this and put it into production and have it work the way it is, because this is only for one specific person, one specific skill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if
We had to see if it works. And
so the funny thing is that after I ran the flow, I went back into the field service, looked into characteristics, and what do you know? Ted had then gotten the level rating because I had to translate the 1, 2, 3, 4 from
HR?
from HR to intermediate or beginner, intermediate, expert, or something else. So it's just basically translating that during the setup, and it works.
But what you should do is you should have the same set of ratings across your platform. So if you do 1 to 4, or if you do it in text or whatever, use the same kind of values so that you don't have to have if you have a 1 to 10 skill set of arrange in HR and you have 1 to 4 in field service, you will get into trouble because you need to say, okay, so the 1 to 3 is this one, and etc. So just once you do the long before you do the integration, when you do put in every skill set, make sure that it is the same kind of skill set in all the systems that needs to use skills.
And so back to what is field service, again, back to this calendar, the whole task here, again, to finish it off here, because we're at the end stretch here already. So the whole point here was like, what happens now if I look for Ted? Will I find Ted? Well, so in the field service scheduling board, I then go into starting to do the filter. And in the filter, this is where we kind of say, well, I'm looking for a specific type of resource. And that resource has a characteristics saying that we need a .NET expert level. What can you find in the list of resources that we have to deploy for a .NET expert? And doing the search, Ted Howard appeared. So this was a conclusion. Very good. So this is basically just a very, very happy moment after a few weeks of a lot of hassle and a few emails back and forth to a product team that was obviously in a preview state of things. They really helped me out a lot, but it worked. I mean, without a single line of code, we actually integrated the HR skill set with field service bookable resources skill set, which is actually kind of cool in a world where I mean, this was not possible a few years ago.
No, not at all. I mean, I've sat many hours with the developer working with integrations between FinOps or AX as it was back in the day and CRM. Just going through, because you had to make sure that you had every field was the same type, and if it wasn't the same type, there was no way of integrating. Was now you could just use the same kind of data, and as you see in field service, the characteristics are text fields, and in HR, well, you have text and you have numbers and you have everything. So you need to just make sure that they are the same, and you get to make it works. As Thomas said, it was quite a bit of hassle just understanding how the backend worked, and that you needed to go into CRM to create the FinOps, what do you call it, in the advanced search.
All of the connections really to make sure that they actually could be able to authenticate towards each other, because that was not given.
No, and there are some things you need to think about before you do this. But all in all, we're quite happy with the result.
Yeah.
Of course, the flow could have been changed to not be hard coded, but it works, and this is a demonstration and not a production environment, so the flow still needs a lot of work if you're going to do it, but we have
eventually we would all put this in an Azure function instead, and have it working a lot enterprise scale. But the point is that it worked, and that was kind of cool. I didn't know that a virtual entity was accessible as it was. So we can, in the CRM world, we can use it through advanced find. We can use it in flows. We can use it in any way that we normally would use it without having to know that it is a virtual entity, which was kind of cool.
Very cool.
So I think that's actually all that we had.
I mean, we're a 45-minute session and we're on 43 minutes, so.
Well, we're kind of on time, but yeah, this is an hour long. This was hour long, so I mean, we're available for any questions. If not, I mean, it's probably a good time to sort of get a small little snack break before the next session.
And I just want to do a quick, because in the chat, Ludwig asked a couple of questions, and one on the preview features. Why are the preview features there at all if we never recommend to use it in production? One of them, good question, Ludwig. Thank you so much. No, one of them, the reasons is Microsoft wants to have people test out the features before everyone starts using them, just to make completely sure that everything is the way it should be. If there are major flaws in a preview feature, they will retract the feature. They will change how it is working. And that is why you should always do it in preview and or in your test environment. And you can also, if you have big changes coming, as it was with the benefit feature, and once you start using the new benefit feature, then you can't go back to the old one, and the old one isn't working anymore. And that is the kind of thing you want to test out in a test environment with your own data before you go into production and activate it there. And I see we have someone with the hands up. Syed, do you have a comment?
Syed, you can unmute yourself. We make you to a speaker.
Yeah, I can see it's enabled now. Hey, Thomas and Malin, first of all, it's a nice session. Thanks for that. I had a question specific to integration between HR to FNO and CRM, right? So what's the, as far as I know, the default positioning when we are integrating these systems. So we use the CDS data integrator to integrate HR with, if I can take FNO as one of the thing, so to FNO. So what's your recommendation? I mean, we still use that as the first option to integrate to FNO. And if there are any entities which are not available for the CDS data integrator, then in that case, we go use virtual entities with Flow in combination.
Yeah, because the finance operations integration is a bit different from the CDS one, because you there have a set of entities that are going from HR to finance and operations, and never the other way around. Right. And I can post a link to a post I have about the integration, because they're very specific, and that is just the few things you get. So if you want to integrate even more things, then you would have to use the virtual entities, as far as I know.
Okay. Only in case if the entities which are not available in CDS integrator, so that's where we fall back on virtual entities, right? Not everything we go use virtual entities for the integration.
Well, I think it's a good question, because if you see the whole, okay, so if you were to talk to, and I'm sure that someone else can be more specific about this than I am, but if you're talking about the regular FinOps, and we're talking to the Dataverse integrations right now, I mean, anything seems to be virtual entities and dual rights.
Right, yeah.
So I haven't really understood how they do it. and I haven't seen how complex it is to set up. Maybe that's another blog post for another time. If I really went, but I mean, I don't even know how to set up a trial environment for FinOps, so I wouldn't even know where to start. But yeah, I just in general, virtual entities is absolutely something getting a lot of love from Microsoft these days. So if for me, I didn't know anything about it, so that's why I had to learn something about it. So yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Yeah, and the standard integration from HR to FinOps is from the HR side is worker address, job position, employment, position, worker assignment, and department.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the standard integration, and it's always from HR to
one direction.
finance operations, never the other way around.
Other way around. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
Thanks for the question. Anyone else?
Otherwise, we can, of course, promote the next person. Isn't it Anna?
Anna?
I think
Hello.
it is in the...
Hi.
I just want to say that you two helped me when I was in trouble with the virtual entities. So I was there before.
That's one of the great things. Yeah, one of the great things with the community is there's almost always someone who's done it before you, and if not, the HR product team is really great. You can always ask them questions and they will answer you. So they're just one of my favorite teams because they're so open and listening to feedback and everything.
Yeah, I think, and also I think that we have a growing community trying to contribute, and today that's a part of it. We can see that there are lots of sessions today. So yeah.
Yeah, that's just cool. So anyway, yeah, and also there's another question here. Will there be something about a blog? I think blog post. The blog post will be posted out, but that will be right after the amazing Scottish Summit.
That's
that will
perfect.
be
As long
later.
as if I can do it, everybody else can do it.
That's kind of my approach to CRM in general when I do blog posts, is that whatever I can do, anyone else can do. I am a little technical, but not very. I just try to just break it down as easy as possible and just, do exactly what I did, and it should, in theory, work.
Great.
Yeah.
So as Thomas said, our next session together actually is at Scottish Summit in the last Saturday of February.
Oh, so it's that long too. Okay.
Yep. So hopefully Thomas will have gotten the slides in English by then. And we are ready to go again. And there is also a quiz that you can sign up for Scottish Summit and donate some of the money for charity. Yeah. It's really good.
Cool.
Okay. I think then we can have.
If there are no other questions, I think we can say thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. Then maybe let's have a short break until 5 and then continue with the next session. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Both of you.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye-bye.